Right. Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome to the Empowered Teams podcast. We have an enterprising group of people this morning, all experts in their own field, of which I'm going to shut them and ask them to introduce themselves. First of all, I introduce myself, Toby. I am the captain of the Sunk team based out of Paris, and we make video games for our sins, which seems to be an interesting subject for this morning's podcast. Can I introduce you to Nick from Eden Smith?
Thanks very much, Toby. Yeah, so Nick from Eden Smith. I lead our consultancy division, helping businesses in their data and sustainability transformation, but more on the people cultural transformation as well as tech.
And you weren't reading that. You didn't have that written down there. That was great.
No. It's elevator pitch, isn't it? You've been in business so long, you got to perfect your elevator pitch.
Pretty good
10
me,
seconds. What do you say?
And Phil, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
I was trying to think about how I describe myself now. So I'm part of the partnership between Eden Smith and O'Deal. I'm a former CDO myself. I think I'm passionate about data, culture, change, and how we use all of that to influence what businesses look like now and look like in the future. So that's kind of where I come from.
First of all, it's compliments to you, though. If it wasn't for you, there wouldn't be this partnership,
Well, we have a long history with Jez and Nick that go back many years for many roles and positions that I've worked in the past, and they've supported me, and they've supported the data community throughout kind of like the last 8 years or so, and they're real ambassadors for what we do with data in the industry.
So, Jez, let me introduce you. You have just had 8 years of anniversary of your business as well.
I know. Nice to
I
see
remember
you,
it. I remember it well when you came to see us when I was working for a financial regulator. I do remember at the time.
Exactly. It's been a long time, Phil, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm Jez. I'm one of the co-founders of Eden Smith. I'm currently operating as a CEO, and yeah, we set the company up 8 years ago, a few days ago, to try and best utilize the power and capability of all of the skills for data and analytics. So really trying to work out what's the best way to help businesses through their data transformations, utilizing people power through technology, soft skills, education, training, and consulting and projects. Hence why we have Nicholas with us as well. Yeah, good to be on the call.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Well, we've in our preamble, in our preparation for this podcast, is we were trying to choose a clickbait title, all right, for the thing. We were coming up with something unusual, but also poignant in terms of what we're doing. Would you like to explain what the title is, Nick?
Yeah, gamers are coming for your C-suite jobs. That's it. So beware. I think throughout the years of business, we've always looked at what makes good leadership, what makes a successful business. There's been obviously lots of works around it all, and the more you, particularly when you start building relationships over time with people in your sphere, in the data industry, in other industries, the more you start to realize when you get into their personal lives of what makes them successful, that actually there are gamers amongst us, and we were all big kids inside, So I think it's something. One thing I think it's something we're seeing a very big shift, and we will continue to see a shift on as the gaming industry's kind of exploded over the last 5-10 years. And yeah, I think it's going to make our future C-suite are going to be full of gamers.
As not a natural born gamer, but been radicalized by Toby in the importance and what it can do for you individually and also businesses. Isn't gaming just about shooting zombies? And how on earth does that help us run a business better? Is my challenge.
I'm sorry, Phil,
to all.
Just because you weren't online playing against someone, it doesn't mean back in the day you weren't sat there against your Commodore shooting aliens on the screen. Just because they were little boxes, right?
I think it was only until I met you guys. Like, obviously, Phil, I've known you for years, but when you introduced us to to Toby and Sonk and Odile and everything, I never even knew this or the power of gaming and how it could contribute to business in the way that it does. And what it's done for me personally as a gamer, I like the shoot 'em ups, right? I like killing zombies. These days I don't kill zombies. I kill real people on Warzone and stuff like that. Not real people, but they are fellow online gamers. But the interesting thing was when this relationship started, what it's made me do is go back and think, oh my God, all that stuff I've been doing through gaming, there's a lot of things there that I actually apply to everyday business life. And I never realized it until I played this game. And then, and basically just, and now it's maybe more of aware when I am gaming of what I'm actually doing. And then you can start to link the benefits of how you can take that away. And I think that's what's really interesting about this discussion, because we'll probably explore that a little bit more.
Yes, I think if we go back early days, like we used it as a out of work stress, I guess de-stressing and switch off from business, so that we actually had time, not when we were together, not talking about business, stuff like that. But Matt, you and I used to go online and play Call of Duty. But when you look back at what actually happened, like Matt's tactic is, let's just run, pick up the best guns we can, get around the map as soon as possible, go find people, and if we lose, we lose. If we win, we win. But let's try and make it out. Your tactic was 1 minute. Where are we going first? Why are we going to that place? What's going to be there? Can we scope the area before we actually cut across this field?
Before we go in for the fight.
Before we go in for a fight, can we work out who's going where and when? And every single time we used to got beat by the real gamers that play every single day, all this, and we'd see they would have the way they approached the building we're in or stuff like that is different. But I think we started then to understand and learn how we communicate or how we approach situations differently.
Well, don't you remember as well, from a communication perspective, so we would all be on the game and everyone would be talking at the same time, and no one would really be listening. And then, like Nick says, one person just goes off with their own plan because that's what's worked for them in the past. But as a collective, as a team, it might not work. And 9 times out of 10, it didn't work. And when you've got 3 people that are approaching the situation differently, especially if we look at that right now with what you would feel is important, Nick, and actually if you guys, Toby and Phil, played the same game with us, you would have a different approach to how you think they're going to be successful or win the game. But ultimately, there's no question that unless you work as a team, you won't win.
But it's interesting that.
Sorry, Phil. Go on.
I was going to say it's interesting that what I found fascinating about kind of delving into this and also the research I've done around it is that you naturally start to form teams. It's not like someone's there telling you to go and form a team. You kind of build those muscles and those skills yourself.
Oh, so right, Phil.
And so it ends up being like this innate skill. It's not like someone sat you in a room, which is old traditional training, with a PowerPoint saying you're now in a team and you're a team member. You're actually you're there and you're talking over the top of each other, and no one's clear who the leader is about all of this or who's doing all the planning. And somehow, intuitively or just through osmosis or the repetition of playing, you start to realize, oh, actually, we've got to work together. How do we start to solve these problems collectively? And that was a real eye-opener for me. You suddenly start realizing, right, you're actually all of those hardwired skills that you want in a workplace are there and being used every time you play. And we should say there's different types of games. We're talking about the kind of multiplayer. Is that the right phrase? Multiplayer games. You've got the ones where you're just on your own.
Cooperative or teamwork.
Yeah. But you know what, Phil? What's really interesting as well, bearing in mind, between myself, Matt and Nick, we know each other. We've worked together for 15, 20 years all in all, right? Interestingly, if you go into a multiplayer game and you're teamed up with 3 people that you don't know and you've never played with, you might go on one game and you have success. You all go to the same place, or someone says, I'm going here, the other 3 follow, because they assume you might have a plan, and you might have a plan. But then you get there and you go through the game and you realize you are working as a team without even knowing it. And this is with complete strangers. And actually, if you pull that stuff out, and this is why I think it's so important in business, because, customers interact, or businesses interact with businesses, people interact with people all the time. Different groups of teams of people with different skills. And sometimes and this is, we'll probably get onto culture. That's why I think that's so important, because actually two businesses sharing values and culture, in my view, will be very successful, or at least have a head start on those that don't share that, because the way they work is very differently. And it's a very complex, when you actually dig into it, it's very complex about, God, if I was actually look at all the components of why that game worked versus why the second game didn't, some of it's very obvious, and some of it you've got to get under the bonnet of.
I think,
And this is what's so amazing about gamification or simulation in business and teams, because it uncovers that stuff. And the interesting part of Phil said is that some of it's naturally learned just through failure, because you fail, and you automatically don't want to fail. People tend to want to be successful. And then the rest of it, you have to hone. You have to talk about it and communicate and change.
I think there's two things I want to pick up in that. I mean, firstly, I think it's Harvard Business Review, when they were talking about the impact of gamification and simulation through businesses. They, like you said, fail again. They picked up on try again, fail better. So essentially, and Tim Peake puts this in his book when he's going through his, army training, his astronaut training. It's saying that the great thing about simulation is you can die. You can fail. You can crash a helicopter. You can crash, crash the spaceship. And therefore, because you can, it's not. He talks about it not being. You need some kind of real life element in there to give the fear factor and the kind of panic factor you'd have in a real world situation. But ultimately, it allows you to try different strategies, to try different approaches. And I think so. But I want to bring it back and say we're not just talking about the, pods, the World of Warcrafts in here. When I think about gamers and the C-suite and leaders, I also think back to simple things. I say simple, but games of chess, games, actual physical games. These have been around for years, and we've always known that we've always said, oh, playing chess or teaching chess is a really, mentally improving activity. But that's because you're testing different strategies against different people and working out different ways to approach things and experiencing different environments. I think, Jez, in our podcast, when we were talking a bit previously about learning skills or experience in the workplace, I said I could have 10 years of experience and play one game of chess every month. And that'd be 10 years of experience of chess. Or I can play every single day for 3 months, and I'd have more experience in 3 months than someone in 10 years, because the amount of simulations and situations I would have seen. And I think this is what gaming allows you to do, right? Gaming allows you to run simulations, fail many times, and gain experience in different approaches.
Can I just pull out something for a couple of points there? I think you're beginning to create a foundation for people listening, but also between you of an understanding of what it is. I think there's something that you said previously, Nick, where you talked about that. We have all of you talked about that. We have so much change coming at us that it's almost our culture of dealing with change is outdated. All right. And that culture is both in the leadership area, in our training way, and in our norms and values of how we work together. If I was to give you a definition of culture, guys, the standard definition of culture within the culture of organizations within the business world is how a group of people solve problems. That's culture, right? In it. And what you've just been describing is how you attack that. Right?
The other thing, to your point, Toby, is that what I see happening now, if I was to simulate that to a gaming environment or simulation, is that we're going into an environment with the wrong ammunition and guns. So
Yep.
if you was to put that into a COD environment, Call of Duty, something like that, it's like we're going into the map and we don't have the right the right equipment.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it happening, right? So
And
you've
the
got
protocols, I think.
and the protocols, you haven't got the
Yeah.
strategy, and you don't have the
Yeah.
tactics. Yeah, because we're moving into a place which, and at such speed as well, which is the thing, and that's why there is that apprehension, because people don't feel comfortable or safe, and that's what I like about this, and that's what you said, Nick. It allows you to run multiple simulations to see what works, and also to fail in a safer environment, right? So when they start to see progress or things that are working well between them as a team, they then start to feel more comfortable, and then they feel a bit more equipped about the change that's coming. The hard part right now is that, you know, I think is the pace in which we are going to have to change. So I feel like there's many teams and businesses out there that have to run through a number of different simulations to actually understand what the strategy will be, what tactics they're going to apply, and what skills they need, what equipment they need to get through this next 5-10 years. That to me is a successful transformation journey.
So go on, Phil.
I was going to just say, I was going to come back and add a little, maybe not a challenge, but just add to your definition around the culture, because I agree with it, Toby. But I think one of the things that a lot of businesses are challenged with now is they kind of get that we're there to solve problems, right? But it's how you go about it, how the teams go about it. So, you know, you used to have, I'm really used to this, working in agile environments, working in hierarchical structures within corporations. Yeah, you'd have someone come along and they would be designated as the token project manager or the leader or whatever it would be, and everyone would kind of follow their tune to solve the problem. But you've got 5 other people that have got knowledge and expertise, but they're not being listened to, they're not being heard.
Yeah,
And
one
of the things you're doing is you can, using the game, you know, going through gamification or simulation allows you to understand that. Why is it that someone at the back is not contributing, but they've really got a lot to say? You know, so sometimes it comes down to kind of psychology. Some people are extroverts, some people are introverts, some people feel quite challenged because someone's talking over. All of those things are played out every day in organisations.
No, you're right. I'm excited about what you guys are saying, because it leads me to this one thing, because I'm thinking the way that Jess is thinking about, right, as and how you guys have grown your business and how you've all known each other. Okay, is that the beginning of this adventure to develop as a team has to begin with the CEO, right? And why do I say that? Because in the preamble to preparing for this podcast, one of the ways that you positioned this just was saying, right, well, I want my team to be the best team. That's an ambition. I mean, the thing in my experiences in meeting a large number of organizations is that people don't necessarily have that ambition. In a hierarchical organization, what they have is almost a total quality management. I want them to be the best administrative process, right? I want those things to be there. But the idea that there's a sense of team, that there's a cohesiveness and a collaboration and shared values and agreed norms in doing that, do you guys think that's important as you embark on this journey of wanting to develop into a real learning organization, so to speak?
I definitely do. I mean, I didn't start off as being the CEO of Eden Smith. Actually, I was a co-founder director with Matt. I think what you realise is that you start to understand that if you don't take people on a journey and you don't have a very clear direction of where you want to go, that's a fundamental flaw anyway, because you do have to have a plan, and people have to believe in you, and you have to demonstrate the skills and the competence that you'll be able to take them on that journey and lead them in the right direction, right? So there's one thing. The rest of it, that my view as well, is that unless you've got a really good team around you who do share your values, and that they feel safe in the journey that you're taking them, then it's going to be quite unlikely that you'll be successful moving forward. And that is my thing. I think most successful businesses are where they do work as a team, they work together. You know, they're all trying to look after each other and support each other, and they have to have a safe environment to speak. Like Phil said, that is really common. And Nick and I have done lots of training in the past. We did some training with Hold'em International many years ago over in Amsterdam, and that was talking about power base of rooms. And this is where, you know, if you don't understand who's in the room and who's got influence, and you know who's actually the decision maker and all this sort of stuff, which technically could be me in my role or whatever, it might not be, you know, then you're gonna. It's a bit like not knowing what you're up against. And I think you have to be equipped to be able to deal with that situation. I wouldn't make a decision if it was about technology within our business. I would look to Nick and I give him the freedom to be able to do that. And I'm sure we've run that simulation, Nick, many times in the past in our company. If I don't allow him to do that, then I'm in a hierarchical environment. And actually, there's a very good book to read. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's called Reinventing Organizations. And it talks about traditions from tribal tribes from years and years, say from years and years ago, it's still there now. But, you know, in most organizations, you can operate very, very successfully in a non-hierarchical environment where pockets of people who are specialist SMEs, they do their thing, they're given the freedom within a governed framework to make decisions. And that's where actually you get a lot of success. Like Phil says, there are people in the room that might not feel comfortable to talk, but they do because they're in that environment. However, it will get to a certain point where that starts to fall down because you have too many cooks in the kitchen. And then what you're looking for then is some direction and someone to say, well, actually, I think we need to do it this way, and this is why.
But we don't. So just to pick up on that, there, Jez. What I've seen and I've been a chief data officer in the C-suite, and I've worked in large organisations and stuff, is that we don't actually train teams and how to work as teams.
Absolutely.
We don't ever do it. You know, what are the strengths and weaknesses? How do you cooperate? You know, when we all went the dash for agile, do you remember we all did the dash for agile, and we'd all have you get a scrum master together, then they get all the SMEs that would be there, and often I'd be asked to be the product owner, right? And I think that's the kind of in the structure. And basically, my role 9 times out of 10 was always trying to sort out miscommunication or poor behaviour, or someone hadn't done what they were supposed to do on a certain time. That's what I was doing. And it was always evident to me that they weren't really ever working as a team. They were just they've been put into a team, but they're working in their specialist silos.
Yeah.
And actually, no one had ever trained them to actually, and sometimes they didn't know each other because they'd be taken from different disciplines, depending on what the type of project was.
That's fine, Phil, but that's the team. You're part of the team. That's all great. The team can have all those skills, but why, going back to the thing, you know, why does it make the C-suite jobs? Or why are the gamers essentially coming for those C-suite jobs? Like you're talking about the team, brilliant. They don't have all the skills. I'll sit in my ivory tower. But I think what is it that we look for, or what is it in successful businesses make up that C-suite today? What skills do they have in that C-suite, or what we're looking for in a C-suite?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, because exactly the same applies to that agile team as it does to a board. And I have spoken to many, I've been sat on and spoken to many, many boards, right? And one of the challenges I'd say for a lot of organizations is because of culturally how they do, is that you make it to the board or the exec team, you've been successful. You are the bit, you know, I'm the finance CEO, I'm the whatever, you know, I've made it to there. I've got my team together. I'm protecting my empire that have got me there. I want to make sure that I get the bonuses for my people. I want to make sure I get funded for my people. Around that team is often a huge amount of dysfunction. There's a huge amount of egos working in there, in that space, with the CEO desperately trying to keep them all on board and all aligned, but they don't operate as a team. So you're absolutely right, Nick.
So what you're saying is we all want our team to win and no one else's to.
No, exactly. It's often I often felt when I was presenting to the team, it's like my area was trying to have to influence the others to back my project, right? No one was really sat there thinking, what's in the best interest of the
let me
organisation and the
this then.
team.
Let me put this then. A lot of games, you have that winning mentality. There is a way to win. There is a way to compete. There is a leaderboard. There is, gamification. You get badges for doing certain bits, and obviously a lot of the bigger games are, FPGs and stuff like that. But let's take that context out. Let's look at, even in the childhood and bits like games like Minecraft. Like there isn't really an objective in that game, right? There's not a one team can win. And what I think it allowed people to do was start to create their own objectives and actually work towards a common objective. I don't know, Jez will probably know, but the video guy who literally has created a career of streaming his
TDM.
his huge kingdoms that he's created. Now, no one said that the objective of Minecraft is to create a kingdom, right?
But actually, Nick, I've got to stop you there. Dan TDM's objective was to train other people, to show them the way. The reason Dan TDM is successful is because he showed much failure and filmed himself failing, so that all other people can watch and learn and do it better, right? He's become a North Star for the Minecraft gamers. I'd like to go back to the other point as well, right? One of the things that I think we're missing here is that if you had a scrum team together, let's just play, playing Sea Change, for example, you have a scrum team there of mid-level experience, and you can have an exec team over here with 25 years experience. I would guarantee that neither one is going to do better than the other. And that is because you are taking people out of you're putting people in a very different environment. It doesn't matter that you've worked your way up. Phil's absolutely right. You'll be looking after for that of what that particular team or your group of people or your department because you've got your P&L to look after and all this sort of stuff. But ultimately, these skills are soft skills, what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still the statistic out there, which is still actually today that about 75% of training budget is spent on hard skills. And 25% on soft skills, right? And yet we're in an area right now and in an environment with all this change coming and everything else where what we need is the soft skills.
And you guys are in the forefront of this because you're in the recruitment business as well.
We see it all the time. I talk about it every year, Phil.
And whenever I've been recruited, the number one factor that I used to look for when I was recruiting people, if I've been brutally honest, was I would be presented by half a dozen CVs where the hard skills would be pretty much similar. Yeah. Education background, skills and qualifications, the ability, my world was in data. So they're data engineering, data science, Power BI, they could do Python, whatever it may well be. I have those. My differentiator was those soft skills. Do I think this person could fit in with my team? Are they do they show like a level of curiosity that they're actually going to go out and solve problems in and of themselves without always coming to me?
I don't need to be a gamer to get those skills.
No,
and I don't need to be. But therefore, why?
Good challenge. Right, but what I have noticed is a lot of them are. A lot of them are. Why is that? What is that? So
because there's
suddenly a common denominator that started to come through was that, and Toby said this before to me. You should ask people to put in their CV what games do they play, because it'd be interesting to see.
No, it's not just that. In the museum in Copenhagen, it's the Future Museum, and I think it's just finished now when I visited. And it had, as part of the future, it said CVs will include what games you played as a qualification.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, this is why what's really interesting is because you do have the story mode game, problem solving type, strategic, games, and you have your FPSs, like your first person shooter, because they want a bit of action tactics, and but you will get that, and people naturally gravitate to where they feel comfortable and where they're good and where they're successful. I've played all sorts of different games. I know which ones I'm pretty good at. I know which ones I'm absolutely crap at, right? So it's because it lends itself to the skills or the natural skills that you have.
If you build on that, Jez, right? You take that, okay, and you say one of the things that we've not put into the context in the gaming, the gaming world is coming for the C-suite. Is it's more like the new training model is coming for the new C-suite, because running alongside this is a revolution in entertainment, and that revolution in entertainment is e-sport. And esport came from the gaming world, all right, and has grown so that it competes with every other form of entertainment on the planet. And in such a way, for a lot of people who have a traditional non-gaming background, they cannot comprehend how you can get 5, 6 people, particularly if you're watching League of Legends, for example, which is a top-down view, right? And there are literally hundreds of thousands to millions of people watching this in real life and online. How? Right? And what they're watching are this, and there's a lot of argument about, are the same skills that you see on a football team. You're watching teamwork, communication, goal setting. So you've got people, and particularly gamers, who who I mean, how many times do you? I mean, I remember you guys telling me you get home from work, you do your stuff, you drop on the war zone, you play with a team, and you do that regularly. And other people do that, whether it's Monster Hunter World, whether it's Call of Duty, whichever games that you're experiencing as a form of entertainment.
Toby, you
Over
just
time,
mentioned.
over time, it builds up a set of skills.
You have to ask why
Sorry,
they're playing it.
Yeah.
You know, like, but the reason I play it outside of normal enjoyment is well-being. I was astounded by the amount of, when I started interacting with more senior people in business, of how many of them were gamers. But they're 9 times out of 10, the reason they're doing it is for their well-being, right? And you know, the work environment can be a very stressful place. And what's beautiful about having a game that teaches soft skills is that you're connecting the two slightly. So people don't see the same thing as going into a room, you know, with the laptop and a PowerPoint, and being asked questions, or being asked to do role play, or being put in a team where you've got to try and solve a problem with people you don't know. 9 times out of 10, it's very uncomfortable. I don't like it myself. I used to think, oh, like, here we go again. I'm on one of these exec leadership training courses for the next 4 days. I've got to sit there, and talk to people about personal stuff and try and solve a problem and all that. And I hated it. But, you know, get me on a game to play with some other execs. We've got to try and solve a problem. I'm already feeling like I'm not thinking about work.
No.
And I'm developing.
Can I draw? Sorry, Phil. I apologise. Go on.
It was just, and I know that Nick's desperate to jump in as well. It was just something you pricked my interest in, because you mentioned football, and the Super Bowl was at the weekend.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about the Super Bowl, and it's the same with the Premier League, is where they're all videoed, and they watch back their own performance, their own team performance, and they all work with simulation before the training.
Absolutely.
So simulation and video gaming and video simulation is part and parcel of their learning methodology. Every single one of them goes through that process, you know, and it's really fascinating to me that military and sports teams would really focus on this and use simulation, gamification, all those sorts of things within how they're learning strategy and how you work as a team and on the pitch and all that sort of stuff. But actually, and the same in the kind of military, how do you operate within a team within a military environment? But you don't do the same in the business world. You're not then working within teams.
No, because I think what.
Oh, it's very rare. I mean, I'm sure some out there will say they do, but I haven't seen much.
No, it's rare. It's rare. The golden thread that I'm pulling out, though, is what we call in a pedagogical business the transferability of skills, right? And that transferability of skills comes from the simulation environment or the game environment is an immediate transferability into real world, and vice versa. To the extent, sometimes, if you think about it now, there is no difference between a virtual world and real world anymore, right? When you go out, you're on your phone, you're using Google Maps, you're doing whatever it is. The virtual world and the real world is really coming together in such a way that learning to traverse this world for gamers is easy.
You know, you watched the Gran Turismo film, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, what happened with that? It's a perfect example where you've got thousands of gamers playing GT to the point where they felt comfortable to bring them to real life racing and teach them to become racing drivers.
Well, exactly.
Becomes a world champion because he knew how the car was reacting to the parts because he played it so many times.
Yeah.
I found it
I think-
fascinating.
I think in those scenarios, military, football or any sports or whatever it may be, it's a very, although there's lots of change and lots of difference, it's a very constructed, a structured approach, right? There is in a game of football, these things can happen and these situations will happen. What's gonna go on? And so therefore, to create a simulation or a virtual experience or anything like that that replicates it is fairly straightforward. Right. I think if you look in that film in Gran Turismo in the racing world, it comes back to that point of actually when you're in that moment, there may be something the simulation didn't see, or there may be something where you have to actually use the skills you've learned, not what actually happens in the simulation. The skills transfer them to the situation you're in real life. And I think that's what Toby was talking about, that transferable skills. I think for everyone's normal business, we couldn't, or the time, money, and effort it would take for us to create a simulation of our specific business would probably be, quite a lot. And you can't go doing that every single time you want to do some training.
No, but can I just put your hand up and say one of the most important, well, a couple of features there, all right? When we talk about the gaming world, we talk about a gaming world in which it's structured, all right? And the path is structured. And you have sandbox games, like EVE Online, for example, which is the biggest, if you want, continuous space game, or one of the oldest space games in the world, where you come in, there are no rules. There are no rules. Right? It has some of the most fantastic gaming stories ever. 2 years, right? One team took to infiltrate another corporation. Took them 2 years to send in somebody as a spy. Right? I'm really shorting this down. As a spy, entered their guild, right? And then one night they organized a bank raid on the main spaceship. And he went in, got the money out of I'm reducing the skills in EVE Online to simply got the money out the bank. Their guild attacked, right? Got in, escaped with the money. And by the way, this is serious world money as well. All right. These things, when they die, right, don't come back. You don't suddenly come back and find them. They have a real world price. And there are tales on EVE Online that are just amazing like that. 2 years this person infiltrated this guild as a spy and did this. So what we're talking about in terms of transferability of skill is, yes, you were talking about the technical aspect of learning, but the thing that's being affected is your awareness. The thing that you're training is your awareness within a context. And your awareness comes through your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your ears, your body, and the fear that you're dealing with and overcoming. And what I liked about what Jez said last week, for example, when we were having a conversation and we were talking about, well, why is there a need to, why are CEOs saying my biggest issue that I'm faced with is culture? And I pushed Jez on that, and he said, well, it's fear. Fear of what? Fear of change. What does a video game allow you to do? You do feel fear in a video game. You're with your mates, you're with a group. You feel it in your body as if it was in real world. There isn't really your tummy goes if you jump off a cliff. I mean, it does to me. I don't know about you guys. If I'm in a game and I jump off, my stomach goes. It's this concept called presence. Now, what you're describing is that there's a scale from communication skills, strategy skills, tactic skills to well-being, right? That's profound. I mean, that's deeply profound.
Many other environments where you can combine the two.
Toby, I'm just going to because Nick makes a really valid point. I think just coming back to the runabout, you can't simulate every work environment. I think for
sorry, I didn't pick up on that. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I think for me, what you're trying to simulate is the use of those soft skills. Rather, and they're kind of transferable. And I would give you a really kind of powerful. I think this is quite a powerful example. Was that Nick and I, both of us did a workshop a few weeks ago with a large organisation, and we had several teams playing the games simultaneously, playing songs simultaneously. And one of the people at the end, and I really admire it, said, "Look, we were asking for feedback. How did you find the experience?" And one of the players in the game said, "Oh, I'm autistic." and you hadn't given me enough
Neurodivergent,
time.
was it?
Sorry?
Neurodivergent.
Neurodivergent, yeah. And they haven't given me enough time to read the documentation that we provided, yeah? So there's a planning, without giving much away in the game, there's a planning stage where you've all got to go and you've got a load of documentation. They felt they didn't have enough time to do that because they were kind of, by their own words, were a bit slower at processing the information that we'd given to them. On one hand, we could look at that as being a kind of a criticism of the kind of gameplay and what we set up and stuff. But on the other hand, it's absolutely valuable learning, right? Because this is exactly what happens in the business world. Yeah, you'll suddenly come to a meeting or you're doing a project, and someone would then send you over the documentation. You got about 30 minutes before you're going into the meeting to kind of comprehend and read it and digest it, and then be able to say something or to contribute to a meeting. Where some people are able to do that, other people aren't able to do that. But to be able to stimulate an environment where you come across that, even though this was in a kind of the game that they were playing, and then to be able to have the opportunity to articulate that, and then to be able to share that around your teammates with everybody else going, oh, right, yeah, actually, that's a really good point. When we do these things, sorry, Nick, when we do these things in the future, we need to think about that. We need to think, how do we?
Two good points that I want to draw out there. One of the things that we've learned, right, and we've been doing this too long sometimes, but because we were missionaries in doing this, I mean, we fought against prejudice against gamers for so long. I mean, I'm presenting a video game, and it comes with a lot of prejudice. But one of the things to pick on this is about whether it should replicate real life. All right. And one of the actual pieces of research, and we can drop this into the chat on when we publish the podcast, when we publish the video, and put it there, is that the more you replicate real life, the less learning takes place, because it comes back to suspension of disbelief. Actually, the more that it's a cartoon type character, or more that has some form of differences, funnily enough, all right, the suspension of disbelief allows people to just enter it without all the fears and prejudice that come as if it's in real life. And the second thing is if you were going to represent your real business, then what you're focusing on are processes, like it was a manufacturing game, for example, or something like that. Here, because we're focusing on soft skills, it can be any problem or challenge that you need in a multiplayer environment, because it's the soft skills. Can you set goals? Can you solve problems? Can you evaluate? Can you take risks? Can you communicate? Can you manage conflict? Right? These are the key principles, and within whatever environment you've got, that have immediate transferability to your real life, whether it's in your home life or whether it's in your work life. And a lot of people find the leadership skills and the communication skills that they play in gaming are also totally relevant to their personal life as much as it is to their work environment.
I think if you bring that down, that some of the skills that we say in the C-suite have or need are, like Jez pointed out earlier, awareness, right? And I think taking Phil's point there of that situation, I think there was a time box element that we asked them to make progress, but there might not be the psychological safety in your team of someone to actually come out and say, I'm neurodivergent, I didn't feel like I had enough time. But we should all be aware that there are people that might have, need more time in this. At no one point did anyone in the team turn around and said, are we all happy to take the next step? Has everyone had enough time to look at the documentation to do this? And be aware that they were perhaps making decisions that could impact others to do this. So I think awareness is one. The second one that you picked up on there, Toby, is and we talked about, is change, right? If we look at what happened with COVID, X amount of years ago now, that they all blur together now. But no one in the C-suite had ever dealt with a situation like COVID, right? No one had ever been in a situation where governments were saying, you can't go this, everything's got a remote, and we experienced huge waves of change. there's lots of businesses that succeeded from that. There's lots of businesses that failed from it. Good businesses from that perspective as well. But it's how you dealt with that situation. And I think with gaming, none of us have ever robbed a real bank. None of us have ever actually been in a real war zone. None of us have built our own city or been in a spaceship and trying to infiltrate different planets or even look at Stardew Valley, built a little farm. None of us have owned a real farm. None of us have been in these real situations. But what we're able to is be dropped into something. And what do? We look around and we say, okay, what happens here? What's the lay of the land? What is my environment? What tools have I got? Who's around me? What's my objectives? What's my visions? Oh, let's start, see if I get things going. Oh, I planted the wrong crop. That one didn't work very well. No problem. When we reset, I'm going to plant a different crop. Or actually, I've now got, because that crop's failing, I've got to try and do this. And games hit you with situational changes that you're unexpected, unless you go and watch all the kind of spoiler videos, right? So I think it's that awareness.
And even then, they don't always help.
And the communication. No, but you've got awareness, you've got dealing with change, you've got communication. Again, if we pull back to what do we see in the C-suite, what makes a successful C-suite, I think that's where we're getting to here, and that's why we've got gamers that are coming for the C-suite or already in the C-suite. Probably is the
I loved your analogy there about pivoting. Like one crop fails, so you plant another. Isn't that one of the real skills that the modern C-suite need to know, and the new CEO? Because the world is changing so rapidly that tomorrow you may be making sort of a type of product, right? And the next day you could pivot over to doing something completely different with your business. Because
AI comes and wipes your product off the face of the earth,
Well, exactly. You've got to be completely agile, and this is where I think this is a good way to get into why gamers are going to be coming for your jobs, is because they're very good at pivoting, aren't they? They're very, these up and coming innovators, and the people that you see that are coming through will go off in one way, work out that that's working. They're comfortable with failure. Right, they'll make a call,
thing, Phil.
And they make the call early. They're like, this isn't
failure.
Yeah. Whereas when I worked in business, that was always frowned upon. You would beat it to death to make it a success, even if you were looking at it, your project, and thinking this isn't going the direction it should do. But it was like to call it and have the confidence just to say we wasted a bit of money on this, but actually now is the right time to stop it. Is a really valuable skill.
The other thing to add to Nick's points, right? Yeah, you go in and you plant one crop, it didn't work, so you go and plant another. That's actually quite a common mistake. What 9 times out of 10, what does happen is they planted the first crop. Did they plant it correctly? Yeah, that and the difference between probably maybe an exec team with a lot of experience is they might look at that and go, well, actually, they might take a bit more time. They take a step back. They slow down to speed up 9 times. So they don't race off. I've met other CEOs who literally go, that don't work. I'm going to go and do that now. Oh, blood away, I like that. Let's go and do that. And they've got a ton of things going on because most CEOs are very idealistic, right? They've got lots of stuff going on and they want to get going. But I think, well, outside of awareness, I think the biggest thing which I like about, gaming and gamification or working in simulation is it teaches you or trains you to approach things differently. So my view around it all will be approach. If you present an exec team with a situation and perhaps a team with less experience with a situation, the approach to the exec team might be different. They might take that step back. They might run through a set of processes. They might not be able to communicate very well at what they're doing, but they might look at it. They might go up. They might just look down and go, right, okay, that is a situation. Whereas perhaps what we're looking for here is a team of people that don't have as much experience who get straight into the weeds. They're straight into it. Like, oh, okay, let's try and sort it out. They don't sort of like take a step back. And I think that this, playing song and stuff like that immediately makes the people playing take a different approach. Every single time you play it once, you'll go, that didn't work. Okay, so what's the next approach? Well, let's try this. So we'll do that. And they'll have that, but by the end of it, if you've got a team playing song, after about 3 months, they will take ages before they make any decisions. because they will look at the situation, where they will look at the environment, they will look at the skills, they will look at the data they've got. That's what you're looking for, right? And that's what in real world business, when shit hit the fan with COVID, for example, that was Matt and I were going, right, and you, what are we going to do? We didn't immediately go, right, let's do that, let's do that, let's do that. We actually went, right, we need to think about this big time.
Let's step back. Yeah.
Let's step back, and we took a very big step back. And
there's a game called Frostpunk, which is really good. It's about basically the world's iced over, and there's this one ship that's gone out, and you have to start. It's a simulation of like a city simulation style approach, or survival simulation, and it does very well at doing that. It throws you situations where it forces you to get into the weeds. Like all of a sudden, you've got to push how many workers you want in each factory to build whichever item you want, and then some of the workers will strike, and it will tell you like each individual person that you've put assigned to that strategy, like what their wage and household situation is and stuff like that. But sometimes you've got to take it to the higher level and go, overall, how many resources have I got and what resources do I need? Does what's going on in the weeds of that factory really make a difference to the overall objective of what I'm trying to achieve? So I think these games force you to switch between those low-level detail and high-level objectives quite quickly and quite easily. And like you said, to understand, well, what is enough information and how do I make a decision for the overall objective?
You reminded me of an experience that I had when COVID hit, and I was then involved in what do we do as an organisation to keep the kind of ship running whilst we can't have people into the office. What was really interesting was we immediately turned to the technology folk to work out how can we kind of communicate as everyone set up with Teams or whatever like that, right? But what was fascinating for me was not as ever, it's not the technology, it was the ability for people to go and use it. So actually what the tech teams doing, the engineering teams and all of that, they've been using this kind of as we are now for donkey's years, yeah? This is how they communicate. They've got Slack channels where they've been talking to each other for ages and having these conversations. For other parts of the business, when I went to the marketing folk, for instance, this was like news to them. This was like, oh, yeah, exactly. And they were like, oh, no, you can set it up like this. You can run your presentations like this. And then I went to the sales team. And they're like, no, we have to be customer facing all the time, Phil. You know, we can't possibly. No, I can have it so that it looks really professional for you. When you dial on, you don't have to travel to them. Now, funnily enough, they love this ability now. They don't have to travel everywhere all of the time. They only go to the meetings that they really need to that are face to face, rather than they can have them online. But actually, what the technology folk that have been using for ages were able to bring that culture change over to everybody else in the business. And then I had like the finance teams and stuff had never bloody seen a meat channel in their entire life. Was suddenly like, oh, this is really.
It was kind of a lot of finance teams film.
Well, that was my experience anyway. They were kind of. I generalised to make the point, but you see where I'm coming from. It was like, and then really, actually, it was just kind of like culture. And now, as we are now, it's so ingrained in us since we've had COVID that people can't think of a world without it. Now we're having to go the other way round, people are trying to encourage people to come back into the workplace. But the first conversation I have with people are going to hate this. They can't do this. They can't possibly. Productivity is going to drop off the cliff, and we're never going to get anywhere, and nothing to get done, and it's all. And actually, none of those things came about.
Can I pull on the thread? So can we start to wrap this up, guys? Because I think it's been a really fruitful discussion. I think that as we start to sort of try and pull it into some form of bullet points, is that for me, all right, as a guy focused on the pedagogy of change, all right, one of the things that always struck me is there's a book called A Fish Rots from the Head, and which is about the organizational learning. And in that particular book, what they talk about is that learning has to be greater or equal than the rate of change in the marketplace they used at the time. And here, what I see sort of bringing that together is that culture, your culture, right? Which in essence is your soft skills, has to be greater than the rate of change that's happening around you. And you've just described that. And if we come back to the fact, that I think that if you operate in a hierarchical structure, it is impossible to adapt at speed to change. And that is one of the biggest, own goals that you can make as an organization to do that. What a simulation like Sank, a game like Sank allows you to do is to readdress the situation of operating as a team, to immediately see the skills gap involved, which is what you just described there, Phil, between where we're at, what we know, where our comfort zone is, and where we need to get to. And then when we've got there, that's a new comfort zone. All right. What I'd like you guys to do is just, as we wrap this up, is, putting your heart on the table is what's the 2-3 key points that you want to leave people with at the end of this, to help them learn, to help them address the challenges of change and culture that they've got out there.
For me, I think it's that our gamers come for the C-suite jobs. I think there's already a lot of gamers in those jobs, and just can attest to that on that side. Do you have to be a gamer to be the next future of the C-suite? No, I don't think so. But what I think is, tell me somewhere where I can learn all my soft skills. I can actually get some de-stress and decomp from the stressful world of business, and get some well-being, and I can actually build out communities and friends and stuff like that in a situation that doesn't involve gaming. And it's probably one of the other ways that you can develop those pieces. But for me, gaming is a very now accessible way to develop the skills that you could or should need to be the future CEO or C-suite.
Yeah, I agree, Nick. If I was going to leave in my current position, I feel like there are some things that I've learned that are working, and I would encourage certainly other boards to be open and do something different and move into what I would call a bit more of a modern way of working. And what I mean by that is that, I don't believe these traditional methods of training are going to be fit for purpose for the future in the next 5-10 years. So I would urge, if you haven't ever looked at gaming, you probably have, because if you have got children or you do it yourself, then you will know. But maybe take that step back and actually have a look at what's going on, because through gamification, you can stimulate your team, you can get people working together, you can improve communication and all the wonderful things that it does, and make them more resilient to what's coming, and I think be more successful as they move forward. So I guess the key message is do something different. Take a step back, have a look, and do something different.
I think I'd echo that point around the do something different. I think one of the things that we can see is that society, business, the world is going for a rapid transformational period. All of the talk around kind of AI, as we all know, it's here. It's very real, and the workplace is going to be completely transformed in the next 5 to 10 years. Those that are going to be successful and early adopters of that are those, I think, they're going to have those soft skills, because the technology, the hard lift can be done now. So what you've got to do is train yourselves and your businesses and your organizations and how to get the best out of that, and how to get your best out of your teams, wherever that team is. And that, the C-suite's a team, as well as your Scrum teams, as well as the team that answer telephones. It's exactly the same throughout the whole organization. And what does change look like for you? And you can't if you keep doing the same things, you're always going to get the same results. So if you're looking for change, you've got to do things differently. And that means being quite radical. And one of the biggest changes you can make.
It is different. My PowerPoint's now online on the e-learning platform.
Yeah, we can do it. Exactly. We'll have a go at Canva. Yeah.
Right,
but fundamentally, I think
Discord.
Yeah, no, exactly. And being familiar, being able. I mean, yeah. So I could go on. I'm passionate about this, but actually, training, gamification, the world is changing. Simulations. It's not. And Nick is absolutely right. You don't need to be a gamer to be a
No, you
CEO.
don't need
But
to
what
be.
the argument is, a lot because we're now recognizing in modern companies that we want people with those soft skills at your leadership to have that safe self-awareness around you and those abilities to communicate and bring people together and create environments where fear isn't, represented wherever decisions are being made and all those types of things. And often it is those people that have that kind of gaming background are coming through because they've got those soft skills from that experience.
I
Would be
just
my
want to quickly
argument.
say that if anyone is maybe watching these in linear or maybe not watching these in linear, I think we've got an upcoming session on what skills are needed to harness AI and power skills. So if you are watching linear, look forward to the next one. Join us at the next one. If not, then go back and watch that video too. Do I have to do the
Guys,
like
it's
and
been
subscribe?
I've loved the debate. It's been brilliant. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too.
Thank you very much, guys. Right. I mean, I think for those that are listening, what we're trying to do is co-hear a conversation. We're not trying to make a presentation. I hope that you've liked what you heard. If you are interested, then all the contact information will be down below. On behalf of the Sea Change suite here of chaps, I'd like to say thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. See you later.